Oh my goodness. Okay, so many amazing faces. Whew, this is exactly what I needed today. Today was the day. Um, I am very happy to be with all of you tonight. And while I'm talking, please go make yourselves comfortable, grab a warm drink, a snack, maybe of the chametz variety, some fuzzy stocks. We're just so very, very glad to be together tonight with you. I'm Ariella Morkowitz, the founding director of SVIVAH. There are beautiful new faces here tonight. Welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here. Please stay until the end to introduce yourself. I would love to meet you, and I promise not to run off. 30 seconds about SVIVAH. SVIVAH is all about putting women at the center, discovering and exploring the unique and beautiful Torah that comes from our lived experience. Our goal is always to learn with and from each other, and to do all of this within a community of care. We define both Jewish and women very broadly. If you want to be with us, we want you with us and welcome. And we love that we are multi-generational and diverse in backgrounds and affiliations. We come together in celebration and support of women, our strengths, our unique perspectives, and our ways of impacting the world. A huge thank you to Jordan Rosensky, SVIVAH's Director of Community, and Rabbi Dalia Davis, our Director of Pastoral Education, for everything you did to get ready for tonight. Thank you to the Aviv and Covenant Foundations for believing in the beautiful ways that we come together to learn with and from each other. SVIVAH has been gathering for Pesach since 2019. Actually, that was the first time that Aliza and I had the chance and privilege to work together. It was amazing, crazy, and amazing. It was in person. But every time we come together like this, I feel like this is the Seder that I wish that I could have. So I want to first acknowledge that not everyone has a Seder table to gather around, and many people are not having necessarily the Seder that they planned to have this year. But what I want to share with you is that each year, wherever I am, wherever I end up, and it's been COVID and crazy and all kinds of stuff in between since we started gathering this cycle, whenever I find my seat at the Seder table, I bring this. I bring all of you. And even though there are a lot of wonderful characters in my family who may or may not be on this phone call, I love them dearly. But in truth, it's the warmth, the generosity, the curiosity, and the wisdom that is here. And that's what I hold tight with me when I open my Haggadah. This year is, I do not know. I don't have a word to describe this Pesach. Please feel free to add your own in the chat. This one leaves me, but I know that my heart is feeling very raw, very worried, and having a very hard time getting to that place of redemption, celebration. I am holding so many tefillot, so many prayers in my heart for all the people in harm's way. And in particular tonight, for Rabbanit Aliza and Rabbanit Ann Gordon, who are each here to teach us in the middle of the night from Israel like crazy people, and who may have to run if they have a siren warning, which is a sentence that I never, ever, ever imagined that I would have to say in my life. Normally, Pesach is about telling our story, where we know the ending. We can always cheat and flip ahead to page, what is it, 41? Where the end is foretold, and we're just looking forward to the celebration of redemption. But this year, it feels like, at least for me, that we're very much in the middle of the story. And it's an uncomfortable place to be. I like to know what's happening at the end. So I'm here with all of you in this narrow and tight place, and I'm very much looking forward to the beautiful Torah that's going to come from our teachers and from each one of you. I'm going to say Boker Tov, good morning, to Rabbanit Aliza, SVIVAH's Director of Education, who is wonderful and amazing and willing to be up and teaching us from Jerusalem at 3 a.m. Thank you for the beautiful ways that you teach us to find what we need in our Torah texts so that the Torah becomes what strengthens us and nourishes us, guides us, and holds us. Thank you for this space tonight, Aliza, for gathering us around the SVIVAH Seder table. This is exactly where I want to be this Chag. Thank you for moving mountains and dodging missiles to make tonight happen so that we can be together in this way.
Thank you so much, Ariella. It's so wonderful to be here. Um, and I just wanted to say a huge thank you. I'm always so thankful to Ariella and to Dalia and to Jordan. But I feel like this time, this gathering, I really relied on them so much because even though I'm okay, thank God. It's hard to function and to be efficient when you're in the middle of a war and when you don't get enough sleep. So I'm so grateful to you always, and especially tonight. Tonight we are going to learn together and join together. But before we do so, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to please write in the chat if you have any kavanot for tonight, if there are any intentions that you want to set, if you want to dedicate your learning tonight to in honor of somebody or in memory of somebody, go ahead, please, and write it in the chat. And our words of Torah together should be a merit for all those who we hold dear. Um, okay, so wow, Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halilot. How different is tonight from all other nights? On all other nights, well, first of all, I'm sleeping at 3 a.m. or hoping that I would be. But also, for me personally, I moved to Israel at the end of August. And last Passover, I was in America, and here I am in Israel, living through a war. Kind of the first time I've ever lived through a war. I've spoken to other people who have lived in other parts of the world, and they have said to me, "Oh, I remember when I also lived through a war," which is really sobering and eye-opening. But I am living through a war, and and I know that people here are from all over the world, and you're living through lots of different things. You're living through ambulances being blown up, and you're living through anti-Semitism, and you're also living through whatever you're going through personally, right? Every single year we come through the same time period, but we come through it because going through something different. So tonight we have two goals. Goal number one is to learn together about the Passover night and have that learning be a spiritual support for wherever you are. And the second goal for tonight is something that in Hebrew we call noseh ba'ol im chavero, helping carry somebody else's burdens. In Pirkei Avot and Ethics of Our Fathers, it's listed as one of the ways that we access Torah by helping somebody else hold their burden. And and we are coming together. I think part of the reason that we come together at SVIVAH all the time is because we want to come together with people we might not even know, but we want to help hold their burden. And for those of us in Israel, I'll say very quickly, for those of us in Israel, there was a TV show on the other night, which is like The Amazing Race in Israel. And there was a very real manifestation of this where they, in these kinds of TV shows, everybody's got an assignment, like a crazy hard assignment they have to do. And one of the challenges was to two people crouching and moving a table together. So I'm going to show you what that looked like because there's no way to really explain to you what that looked like. Um, and it was like the most physical manifestation, like a physical representation of noseh ba'olim chavero, helping somebody else move their burden or carry their burden that I've really ever seen. So I'm going to share it with you. This is what it looked like. They had to carry this table while crouching to the finish line. It was crazy. Um, but what made it even crazier was that one of the contestants had a prosthetic leg because he had served in the war and he had lost his leg in the war. And so he tried to do this assignment and he couldn't. And this other couple over here, who had already gone through this crazy hard assignment, talked it over and they decided that even though they were competitors, this guy, Itai, would go and take the place of the competitor with the prosthetic so that they could actually move forward in the competition. And it was just amazing as I've been thinking about what it means to share somebody else's burdens to kind of see that happen on Israeli TV. But I think that this is something that we can all do. We can all hold and help each other with our burdens, and that's something that we're going to try to do tonight. So we have a wonderful lineup of teachers. We've got Rabbi Chani Bloom, we've got Rabbi Tamara Cohen and Rabbi Ann Gordon who are here, and I'm so excited to learn with them and learn from them. Our first teacher is Chani Bloom, is Rabbanit Chani Bloom, and you see her bio in the chat. Chani is an attorney, advocate, and educator. She has studied at many different institutions, Midreshet Lindenbaum, Drisha, Matan, Maharat, and holds a BA from Columbia College and a JD from NYU Law School. Chani, thank you so much for being with us.
It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Aliza. Thank you, Ariella, Jordan, everybody who has put this together and is up at all kinds of crazy hours. Our thoughts and hearts are especially with those of you in Israel. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the other teachers as well tonight. Before we start, I just want to front that I am in DC, but I have a child living in Israel this year, and I have had a very hard time orienting around Pesach with loved ones and friends in Israel, and being under missile fire for the last month, and the news of additional losses today and violent anti-Semitism around the world. It's been hard for me, and I imagine many others of you, to focus on anything other than the current situation. So perhaps not surprisingly, when I started to look at the Haggadah this year, I was struck by how many different ways the Haggadah tries to get itself started. So I wanted to start there. And even when I talk to members of my family, about where does the Pesach Seder start for you, everyone had a different answer. So some people said it's when guests arrive, or when we sit down, or when we say the Kiddush blessing over wine, or when the youngest child asks the 4 questions, or when even after that we say the halachma anya invitation to join us, or when we start telling the story. So all these different parts of the Haggadah that seem like they should be the beginning, but then we have another beginning and another beginning. And so this notion of starting sort of resonated with me when I was having a hard time starting. And so I wanted to just open up to anybody who's interested in sharing where their Seder experience starts for them. So if you want to put in the chat, if you have a ritual way of starting, or if there's something for you that is in your mind, the clear way that the Seder starts, I'd love to see as we keep going. And as we jump into the overview of the Haggadah, I think you can see the document that's being screen shared. Can you see that? Wonderful.
Yes.
Okay, so I've just laid out for you there the overview of the Haggadah, and I'm loving seeing the prep work as being the beginning of the Seder for sure, and the recitation of the steps, definitely. So even when you get to the recitation of the story, there are a number of starts and stops again, right? So we say, this is the bread of affliction. We hold up the matzah and we start telling the story there. And then the youngest asks the 4 questions. And then we give the overview of the story. We were slaves in Egypt. And then we go back and we talk about how our forefathers were idol worshipers. And so we keep starting to tell the story in different ways. And one of the interesting things about all of these different ways of starting to tell the story is that we actually are given a framework in the Haggadah for what we should be doing and how to tell the story. So I wanted to just help us think about these beginnings by thinking about how the Haggadah tells us to think about these beginnings. So after we've started a number of different ways, after we go through, we were slaves in Egypt, before we go back to the beginning of the story, which arguably might be where we should have started, our forefathers were idol worshippers, and how Abraham broke that chain, and then the generations followed in Avram's footsteps, and then went down to Egypt, and the whole story follows from there. We go down to Egypt, and then there are 10 plagues, and God redeems us. In between all of that, we have two texts that don't seem to move the narrative forward at all. And that's where I want to spend some time tonight. And so the first of those texts is known as the four children or the four sons. And this is on the next page of the source sheet. And so this should be familiar to some of you. After we've introduced the overview of the story, the Haggadah introduces these four children, but we can talk, and people have talked for centuries about what they mean, and how to relate to them. So there's a wise son and the question that child asks, and the Haggadah recommended response to that question. And then there's a question posed by a quote unquote wicked child and a proposed response to that. Same thing for a simple natured son and one who doesn't even know how to ask. And that's, you might guess, where I'm being drawn tonight, to the one who doesn't even know how to ask. And so over time, these paradigms of children and different questions have been thought of in lots of different ways. And I think tonight, I'm really feeling like one who doesn't even know how to start or how to ask. And before I get into that specific paradigm, I just wanted to give a hint of what we could do hours of talking about in terms of what these children are. And so different people have talked about these being points in time where everybody can feel wise or wicked or simple or one who doesn't know how to ask. They can represent the Jewish community at different times when we have been shocked or silenced, or where we have found communal wisdom. And so all of these can be seen on an individual level or a communal level, or I'd love to hear how you related to them. And I see a request for the source sheet. I can put that in the chat. Yes, Ariel is going to send it out. Wonderful. And one other paradigm for what these children can be is Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks talks about these being successive stages of human development. So an infant is unable to ask and just takes the world as given. And then there's a curiosity, asking questions with no ulterior motive, just about wanting to learn. And then you can start to challenge things and raise things. And part of the job at the Seder is to listen to how questions are being raised, how people are coming to the Seder and respond in the ways appropriate to that. And I think that's one of the themes here of this text is how are these questions being raised and how should you respond to them? So this Tanaitic text that talks about one who doesn't know how to ask recommends a response, right? For somebody who doesn't know how to ask, the text says, at patachlo, you open for them. And then it continues to say, as it is said, and you should tell your children on that day, because of this, the Lord acted for me when I came out of Egypt. Meaning, for somebody who doesn't know how to ask, you tell them the story. But the text could have said, you tell them the story, without including that strange phrase, at patachlo, you open for them. And so I'm thinking a little bit about what it means to open for somebody. And I'd love if you felt comfortable putting in the chat what you think an experience that you've had of somebody helping open up something for you, or an experience that you've had where you open somebody else up to something. So as you do that, I'd like to share some historic comments on what it means to open up for somebody and some personal ones. And one of the first things that came to mind when I saw this is that you can literally open a story for somebody, right? If you're reading to a child or you're reading to somebody else, you can literally open a book to them, and then you're giving them the world of all of the words in that story. But I think what's going on here might be other ways of opening up an experience for somebody. And so in source 3, the Lithuanian Rabbi Baruch Epstein talks about this strange phrase, at patachlo, and focuses less on the recipient and the interesting phrase of at patachlo. At, as you might recognize, is the feminine imperative. You female should open it, which is just interesting to see that the Haggadah is talking to, it sounds like, women to open the story. But he says something different there. He says, when the female form at is used, it's an opportunity to look at it closely and figure out what's going on. And he says the significance here of the word at, which starts with the first letter aleph of the Hebrew alphabet, and ends with taf, the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The significance there is to just tell them everything that you can, to open it up for them. And I would add, and see what resonates for them. Just give them everything you can, and then see what sticks along the lines of seeing where they're at, give them as much as you can, and open the story for them to come to it wherever they can. Other people have had different interpretations of what this at patach, open up the story for them, could mean. And in source 4, there's a more heavy-handed approach, arguably, that says, open up his eyes and help the person who can't ask, help them see the presence of the divine, help them see what you see. And so that opening up can be an opening up to a vision that I already have. Let me share it with you. And I'm loving seeing some of the responses being shared in the chat about teachers who do this, because I too am thinking about teachers who opened up different ways of thinking, who showed me that you could use literature to expand a Torah text and things like that. And who, when my kids can bring a movie reference to help understand something that I haven't understood before, it often really opens up my mind in different ways. And so as we're talking about this, I wanted to also share 2 more contemporary texts about what it might mean to help open somebody up to something new, to a different experience or to a different way of thinking. And so Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, talks, and this is in source 5, he says, he is quoting Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kutsk, who says, why does it say in the Shema, these words shall be on your heart? Why on your heart and not in it? He answers, the heart is not always open. Therefore, the Torah says, lay these words on your heart so that when your heart opens, they will be there, ready to fall in. In Judaism, spirituality means openness. To one who is open, God is closer than we are to ourselves. But to one who is closed, he is further away than the most different galaxies. The task of education is to teach a child to be open to the voice of God and the miracle of existence. A question asked with sincerity is an opening in the soul. And I think what Rabbi Sachs is getting at there is that it's not necessarily about providing anybody with a specific text or providing anybody with your way of seeing things, but helping them be open to experiences, open to new ways of thinking about it. And that's why we can tell the same story at the Haggadah year after year and always find new things if we are open to seeing them. And along those lines, Dr. Erica Brown also focuses on this opening up theme and what it can mean in the context of the Haggadah. And she writes, "You must open for him" is the literal translation and a resplendent verb choice. This night is not only about opening up the story, but about identifying the nexus where an idea and an individual can meet and a story takes on relevance, personal meaning, and urgency. Find the opening, the portal. The sages were master educators, and like all great educators, they were interested in opening minds and building capacity to learn. What gets in the way of that opening? It's the child or adult who is closed, who can't open up emotionally or intellectually. It's the person who can't change his mind or experience pain and joy fully because of layers of protection, defensiveness, criticism, sarcasm, a false clothing of strength. Let it all go, she says. Dissolve it in the beauty of the evening and the majesty of family and the divinity of the story. We ask this night that all at the Seder stop needlessly protecting themselves. God watches this night. Make yourself as open as possible, and possibilities will open up for you as they once opened up for our ancestors. And so as we think about telling the story, this idea of being open to what other experiences people at the table might have, be open to how the story is landing for them this year in particular, is really something that I am going to take with me and try and help others at my table share, and that I hope to be able to hear new things because of this focus not on what the story has been, but on what the story is for the people who are sitting there tonight. And I think that's what the Haggadah is trying to tell us. And one other way that I think the Haggadah is trying to make that point for us is if we look back at the organization. I mentioned all of the starts and stops. So in between, when we got the overview of the story, and when we go back and talk about another possible beginning, about when Abraham came to recognize God and when our ancestors stopped being idol worshipers, the other text that breaks up those two beginnings of the story is a narrative about 5 rabbis who were sitting in the 1st century and telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt. And I've sort of always related to that text as an explication about the imperative in the Haggadah that the more you tell the story, the better. So here, and this is in source 7, there's a story of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon, who were reclining in Bnei Brak. And they told of the exodus from Egypt all that night until their students came in and said, "Teachers, the time for saying the Shema in the morning has come." And then the Haggadah continues with a Tanaitic story about Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And he said, "I'm almost 70 years old, and I never merited to find the command to speak of Exodus from Egypt at night until Ben Zoma interpreted and this verse that said you should remember the day of the Exodus from Egypt all the days of your life." And so that story of these rabbis sitting and telling the story of the Exodus from Egypt all night is a lovely story about them spending as much time as they can going through the story. And so I always thought that's sort of why it was here. It's to give another paradigm of both telling the story in the way that it most resonates with people, as in the text about the 4 sons, and here to do it as much as you can. But when I looked at this text in the frame of the At Patach Lo, of opening up the story for other people, a couple of other things jumped out to me this year that I wanted to share. And so one of those was the identity of the people who are sitting here. Interestingly, these people are not people who all agree. And they're also differently situated. So while we're first introduced to 5 rabbis, there's pivotal roles played here by their students. So the rabbis apparently would have kept going all night until their students came in and said, oh, you have to go do Shema. It's time to stop doing what you're doing and do something else. The students here are the ones who seem to know best. They're saving the day, if you will. And similarly, in the second story, there's a humility of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah saying, I'm almost 70. And there was this thing that I didn't know until this Ben Zoma, who's presumably this young man, because he's only referenced by his father's name, Zoma, and not his own name, which happens to have been Shimon. I didn't know this until he interpreted this for me. And so this notion of apatachlo, of other people playing an important role in opening up vistas, of helping you see other things, is really embedded in these stories. And they focus on the role that everybody, even the people who you might not think have as much to add, have to add to the Pesach story and to the Haggadah. And one other thing about these individuals is not just that they're differently situated, but also that they really strongly disagreed with each other. And so the first two, Rabbi Eliezer and Yehoshua, are known to have had very opposite views. The Talmud specifically mentions a number of places where they take very strenuously opposed views in the disputes between Hillel and Shammai. Rabbi Eliezer often supports Shammai. Rabbi Yehoshua supports Hillel. Likewise, the Talmud records numerous disputes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon. And so when we look at these individuals, it struck me this year that we're talking about people who would be expected to disagree. They came to the table knowing they would disagree. And yet they sat together, and they sat together all night, and they told the story, and they listened to unexpected voices. And so whereas today, so much of what is so scary for me results in siloed echo chambers of people only engaging with those with whom they agree, the Haggadah offers an alternate vision of gathering in diversity and listening and helping people open up to new perspectives and letting ourselves be open to those too. And it's that vision of the possibility for openness and joint conversation that maybe even comes in unexpected ways that gives me hope for the Seder and hope for the things that we can do together after the Seder.
Wow, thank you so much, Rabbi Chani. That was so beautiful. And I'm really reflecting on what it means to be in a position of openness and like the strength that it takes to be in a position of openness and how hard it is, right? And how often we protect ourselves by closing ourselves off and what it might mean to really come to the Seder table or come to life with that position of openness. So thank you so much for that beautiful Torah. I want to invite Rabbi Tamara Cohen to please join us now. You can see her bio in the chat, and I will also tell you about her. Rabbi Tamara Cohen is an educator, rabbi, and poet who currently works as Chief of Innovation for Moving Traditions. At Moving Traditions, she oversees training, curriculum development, and sexuality education, among other areas. And she's also the editor of the Ma'ayan Passover Haggadah. You can read the rest of her bio in the chat. Rabbi Tamara, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here among you. And Yasher Koach, Rabbi Chani, that was wonderful Torah that I'm sitting with. I really appreciated how you took us to the question of how the Haggadah starts and how we can start this year. And as I've been preparing for this year, I've really been sitting with a question and sort of a paradox that I think is at the core of the Seder that I'll try to bring out through a little bit of text. And the question is, and I heard it also, Ariella, in what you said about feeling bad that you're not joyous and that we're not in a place of liberation. And I think what I've been thinking about is how the Haggadah really is telling a more complicated story. Yes, it's true that at the end is liberation and salvation, but I think it's at the same time, and there's so many different places where it's both we're free, we're still enslaved. We are liberated, and the real liberation is yet to come. Um, and one of the places that I'm first drawn to, I think there's a lot of text, and I'll bring some more. But I think one of the ways that the Haggadah and the Seder is so accessible, not just to kids, but to all of us, is that it's not only text. It's also action. And obviously it's also food. And so I started by thinking a lot about the charoset this year, um, because and the charoset is that mashed up mixture, which can be traditionally for Ashkenazim based in nuts and apples, but can also be dates and apricots and lots of other really yummy things, depending on where the origin of it is and what the fruits were in season there. And we have this mixture that brings a lot of sweetness to the table, and especially brings sweetness to the eating of the maror, the bitter herbs. And at the same time, it's also um, a symbol of the hard labor. And so, like, in it itself is kind of something that feels very true to me about what it's like to come to Seder, especially this year. It's like mushed up in the sweetness is the reality of enslavement. Um, and we're supposed to eat it along with something that is bitter, but it's supposed to help make it sweet. But it's also supposed to still remind us of the hard work. And I think in that is something that we can kind of relieve ourselves of that. I'm not in the right place because we're in the right place. The redemption and the sweetness and the bitterness and the are we free? Are we celebrating our freedom, or are we still in the place of not freedom? It's all there. And so I will share that my organization, Moving Traditions, we have something that you can read about using this. I'm not sharing, but I will share. Sorry, I'll share my screen for a moment. Um, and I think the other thing that can be really nice this year, I recommend if you usually make one kind of charoset, make more than one kind of charoset. It's also a way of honoring the globalness of our people in this moment when we're really feeling where we are situated, where we are, and also wanting to feel that connection to Jews from all over. And there's some questions here that I welcome you to start answering if you want. Why do you think we're asked to taste these two flavors at the same time? What does it feel like on the tongue and the mouth? You can start getting ready for that. And just having it be an opening for what is happening in the world. We've named a lot of it, perhaps in your life, that's creating bitterness, a bitter taste in your mouth. What is something that's happening that's giving you a taste of sweetness? And what does it take to be able to really stay in the balance of both at the same time? Why would we want that? Eating them together. The Haggadah has its own reason for eating them together, which is based in text. But I think that over time it's become more than that. It's become a way to really be with both the bitterness and the sweetness at the same time. And so for me, it's a way to name um, all of what we're experiencing, uh, and to honor the nourishment of our teachings, expressions of hope, joy, connection, affirmations of shared humanity. Um, so I'll just read a little bit of this. We dip bitter into sweet, tasting what's familiar and also what is new. We awaken to the ways we want things to be different right now, this week, next week at the Seder, and sit with the way that things are right now. In there is the challenge. Perhaps sometimes with a pillow, perhaps sometimes on a harder chair. We offer gratitude for the mixing of pleasant and uncomfortable, of what agitates and what calms. We commit to not hiding from the maror around us, nor ignoring all that is good and life-giving in our lives. May we savor the mix of tastes in our mouths, finding balance as we walk ahead. Like our ancestors, let's bravely part the waters, heading forward together into the unknown. So that's one way that I tried to kind of weave this for that moment in the Seder. But I want to go back now a little bit. I loved that Chani, you started with the Va'at. Um, and yes, there's a connection in there with immigrants that I tried to make a little bit earlier in the US. So in the same piece about our neighbors who are under attack, I suppose those of us in Israel can read this in one way, and those of us in the US can read it in another way. We all have different neighbors under attack in different ways. And I can give you another, there's a lot of good readings right now about immigrants, and I think just the opening the door. There's lots of ways. There's the opening the door to welcome, and then there's the opening which we do at the beginning of the Seder, let all who are hungry come and eat. And there's the opening of the door towards the end of the Seder, where that's kind of a opening up to wrath. Though there are traditions of also saying, pour out your love, not just pour out your wrath. And I think it may be a year to honor a combination of those openings, but that's another place that I would see an answer to the person who asked about immigrants. So I was saying, Chani was talking about the word ve'at, which is a feminine word, and why, as one of the questions of that. And just a little bit later, not too much farther down from where in the Magi, the storytelling part of the Haggadah, that she ended, we come to another place that has really been on my mind a lot. It feels pretty heavy to go here, but I decided to leave it in the order, even though I was going to switch the order because you took us so nicely into the order. And I want you to notice, and I will point out in a moment the feminine language because that's sort of what I'm going to play with here for a moment. So this is V'hi she'amda lavotenu v'lanu shelo echad bilvad amad aleinu l'chalatenu ela shebechol dor vador umdim aleinu l'chalatenu v'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu me'adam. This is tough right now. So literally the way this is usually read is the word V'hi is talking about the paragraph before, and this promise to Abraham, which Chani just referred to, the long version of the promise of the covenant. It has what stood for us by our ancestors and us. For it was not only one who rose up to destroy us, but in every single generation. And remember that language in every single generation, bechol dor vador, because we're going to come back to it again shortly. People rise up to destroy us. So I know the last word here is, but the Holy Blessed One saves us from their hands. But for a moment, like this is also part of the Seder. And I think it speaks to what some of us are sitting with, and just want you to notice, take a moment to notice, is this like comforting to see this acknowledged? Is it like the last thing that you want to read right now? And then come back to this question of what does it mean, Vihi Shamda? Is it that the promise is feminine and that's why it's Vihi, because Vihi is a feminine word. It could mean it, but it could also mean she. And if it means she stood with our ancestors and us. There are a whole bunch of readings of this uh, from the time of the Kabbalah and onward that see that word Vehi as referring to the Shekhinah, to the feminine and the presence of God that really sits with us, that travels with us, that comes with us in and left during the exile and stayed with the people, and that moves with the people from place to place. And for me, this really raises a question that I wanted to ask and invite you, if you want, to put in the chat, what is it? If there is a sense of a presence, of something that helps you deal with, that helps you stand, perhaps in a way, knowing that part of our story is a story of, in different generations, there are different threats. Who is she? Who is that one? And how do you feel her? What helps us feel her? In our tradition, one of the ways that we feel Shekhinah is by joining, at least with another person, and then even more with 10 people in Torah study. That brings the sense of the Shekhinah being with us. And I think that can also be true about, cooking together, making charazet, all the ways that we prepare together, that we're bringing her presence down with us, to be with us in the place of, here we are again in another cycle. And this I didn't, so you heard that I've been working on creating spaces for women and feminists. Could it also be Haggadah? That's beautiful. What I hear in that is perhaps like the telling, the ongoing process of telling is, yes, it is the Holy Spirit, the divine bride inside myself and inside Jewish community. Beautiful. So perhaps it's also the sitting with each other and the storytelling that is part of what keeps us going. So I was just going to share another piece of something from that Mayan Haggadah from a long time ago. Sorry, I copied this and it's sort of a little bit sideways. This is a version of the Vehisha Hamda here, with Lavotenu Ve'imotenu. She's stood with us, and just an attempt here to imagine, really draw out lots of moments where, sorry, one sec. Am I sharing the right screen? No. Hold on here. That's fine. Where she stood with us. And this is something you might want to do yourself. try to picture not just the stories of destruction, but also the stories of different times in Jewish history um, when there have been resistors and prophets and queens and warriors and those preserving their faith in times of opposition to Jews. And so I played with this. It is she who dwelt with us within our hearts and souls of all of those who have resisted their oppression in every generation. She dwelled among the judges, prophets, queens, and warriors who in early history led our people and protected them against those seeking their destruction. She inspired the conversos to preserve their faith during the Spanish Inquisition. She fueled the dreams of early Zionist pioneers who envisioned a new and equal society in an ancient land. She energized the Bundes organizers who called her justice and revolution. She strengthened the American immigrant women who organized kosher meat boycotts, labor unions, settlement houses, and aid societies. She gave courage to the ghetto fighters and the kindergarten teachers, the partisans and the rape survivors, the recipe recorders and the food smugglers, and all who struggled against evil in the Holocaust. It is she, the Shekhinah, who dwells among all seekers of freedom and justice and sustains us. So I invite you to consider your own lists of how she has shown up, and think about perhaps if we go back to the Vehisha Amda in this text, I think there's a focus. There's a focus on in every generation they've come against us. And as the Haggadah does, the hero of the Haggadah is Hakadosh Baruch Hu. The hero of the Haggadah is the divine one. And maybe with this interpretation, the divine one, along with the Shekhinah, the more eminent and sometimes feminine spirit of God that dwells with us. But also, how does that one show up in the hands of and the hearts and the strivings of humans? The Haggadah chooses not to do that. It doesn't talk about the midwives. It doesn't talk about, even though the Talmud tells us that we wouldn't be redeemed from Egypt if it wasn't for the righteous women. And that doesn't make it into the traditional Haggadah, but Moshe doesn't either. And that's a really interesting thing to sit with and talk about. Um, because even if you have kids at the Seder, they know a story of Exodus that includes a lot of human action, maybe also action of women, which is key to the story. What does it mean to tell a story this way? And what does it mean to tell a story that's more human-centered? And how do we find that speaks to us? So just one more thing I wanted to share. So I said to remember this Bechol Dor Vador Omdim Aleinu. So here the Bechol Dor Vador, in every generation they're standing against us. And not that much later in the Haggadah, but kind of close to the end of the Magid, we have a different Bechol Dor Vador. Same words in every generation. And this one is Bechol Dor Vador Chayav Adam Lirot et Atzmo Ki'ilu Hu Yatsa MiMitzrayim. In every generation, a person, Adam is really a universal person, so is obligated to see themselves as if they themselves left Egypt. So here we have a different use of the same language in every generation, but not in every generation they're coming to get us. In every generation, we are obligated to imagine ourselves as if we left Egypt. And the text goes on to say, because really you kind of did. Even though we're imagining it, it wasn't just our ancestors. who left Egypt. Lo et avotenu bilvad ga'al hakadosh baruch hu, ela af otanu ga'al imahem. It was not just our ancestors whom the Holy One redeemed. The Holy One redeemed us too, along with them. So there's this interesting play of past, and present and future. We were redeemed already, even though we're still in the process, of reaching for that redemption. But tonight we're remembering it. And again, I think there's a real permission in here, to notice, like, am I right now in the place of Bechol Dor Vador, they're after me? They're after us? Or am I in the place of Bechol Dor Vador, I can imagine myself actually redeemed, actually standing on the dry land between the walls of water? And maybe it's both, just like the maror and the charoset. I just want to give us permission that we can move back and forth, between those two, bechol dor vador. And I think that there's a lot of comfort. There's so many ways that I feel, oh, this is unprecedented for me in my life. I haven't lived through this before. Aliza, you said, like, I haven't lived through this before. And for many of us, there are so many firsts, but there's something about even the sound of it, of the Bechol Dor Vador, this is what we do generation after generation. We both live in the story of there are those against us, and we live in the story of we were redeemed, and we're being redeemed, and we can imagine ourselves. And I invite you to taste that, to taste it in the matzah and maror, and charoset, and to make space in yourself and at your Seder for all of that cycle. And we do end with a lot of singing, and I hope that that's where you can also end, with allowing that song.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Tamara. That was so beautiful, and really a great reminder that sometimes we think, oh, Passover, redemption, it's all easy and it's so different from where I am right now, but that the night of Passover really incorporates, as you said, the sitting with the discomfort, and the being in different places at the same time. And thank you for highlighting that for us. Really beautiful. I want to invite now Rabbanit and Gordon to join us. Rabbanit, and I hope it's okay if I say, is an old friend. She is also the deputy editor of ops and blogs at the Times of Israel, veteran educator, and lives in Jerusalem with her family, where she co-hosts both the daily podcast Talking Talmud and Chachmat Nashim podcast as co-founder of the organization. You can read the rest of her bio in the chat. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Aliza. I would be offended if you didn't count me as an old friend. I have been thinking a lot about the preparation for Passover this year, in part because I'm talking to you all from Jerusalem, where we haven't had school for the past many weeks. I mean, a lot of us have gone into preparing the house for Pesach in a way that we don't always get a chance to do. I mean, we always prepare a lot, but there's a slower pacing to it because I have to keep everybody busy. And the fact that I've been preparing for this pace, say the past 10 months, because I'm a co-editor of a new Haggadah that has just come out called the Passover Haggadah, On the Path to Redemption. And I think that I'm going to pull from what both Chani and Tamara have already said. I'm going to screen share in a moment a little bit about this Haggadah with an apology to begin with, which is that we never thought we would sell out when we put it together. This was a brainchild of Shira Lincoln Sheps, who is I guess, the inspiration behind As Nashir as a series. I'll talk about that as we go. and Rachel Sharansky Danziger, who I know has deep ties to the SVIVAH community. Um, we've been working on this since literally the end of last May. And when we figured out how many books we would need to print, it literally never, in our wildest dreams, did we not think that we would literally sell out. And we hope to be able to go to press again and be able to the interest that we have encountered. So I apologize for teasing you all with what's going to be the Haggadah of the night to look at it. I'm going to also figure out how to share my screen. Sorry. And I want to talk a little bit, not so much to sell the Haggadah, since I can't, but about what I experienced in the creation of this Haggadah and how it brings me to the Seder table in a different way this year, perhaps in years. I would agree that this is a new experience like that, even more so than the missiles that have been coming my way, not personally for me, but still in my direction. I think that the global anti-Semitism has been a shock to my personal system. I grew up as a student of the Holocaust, and as much as I always believed deeply in the Haggadah as it could happen again, it could happen anywhere. B'chol dor v'dor, exactly as you say, in every generation, there has been some move against us. I just don't, I kind of thought we were past that. At least in to this degree, and so it's shocking. And as Aliza said, I work for a newspaper. So I see not just, what might be happening in my family's community in Massachusetts, for example, but also what happens in Australia and long before Bondi Beach. So the whole of it, I think, is a new global experience for the Jewish people as we come to Passover. And I'm glad it's new, because otherwise it would be that much worse for the past however many years since the end of World War II. I want to talk a little bit about this Haggadah and where it brought me. I want to begin with Az Nashir and what we were trying to do, and then hopefully what we set out to do. I'm going to scroll a little bit so you can see. This was a collaborative effort. First of all, I should acknowledge our very tremendously wonderful graphic designer and typesetter and everything like that. The only man really involved in this, besides the actual physical printer, Yitzi Wolf. He did just a tremendous job here. And this is the collaborative effort of women, women in Israel, women who came to us either through the previous Az Nashir books, which again I will explain, and Matan, the Women's Institute of Torah Study that has been around for, I don't even know, I think we're going on 40 years. So there's a tremendous amount of involvement, I would say, on the part of many people. You'll see here the dedication, the work. I'm not going to stay on any one page, so I apologize also for rushing past before we can read too much in depth. But it's dedicated to the Jewish women of our generation. Now, as a series began, we were in the midst of the war with Hamas in Israel. And there is just so much going on here in Israel. But I'll stop sharing for the moment. There was so much going on, and people felt that people felt that they had so much to, an outpouring of emotion, an outpouring of community. There were women who were really holding down the home fort because the many men were called up to fight. And there was this awareness somehow. It dawned on her, and she shared it with me and with Rachel, and so then we became a team. That women had something to say, and that maybe we could provide comfort and prayer and some kind of recognition that this is in the part of a continuum of Jewish history, of the experience in Israel, the experience of the Jewish people across the world, with reference to tchinas, if you prefer the Yiddish, of women writing prayers in the vernacular, which began, centuries ago. It's not exactly a newfangled thing. And we put together, again, a collaborative effort of women writing prayers in the vernacular, meaning they wrote either in Hebrew and we translated it to English, or they wrote in English and we translated it to Hebrew as a companion, let's say, to the Siddur. And it was designed to be very much for the moment. So there are prayers about, somebody sending their spouse or their child off to war, or people who had experienced severe loss from the loss of a child or a spouse, again, in the war. Women who go to the mikveh for ritual immersion every month, but what are they supposed to do when their husband is off at war? So somebody wrote a tchina saying, this is what you said, here is something to say if you want to put something into your own words in this time, because we felt, again, so many people had things they wanted to say without having the words. So we tapped scholars and poets and artists and so on. We did it again for the Yoms, what I call the Yoms, meaning Israel Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day. They all have Yom, the word day, a much smaller version and more lasting, meaning the question of how in the moment are we, and how much is it something that can surpass just these past couple of years. The prayers for the hostages release have been answered, some in better ways and some in more sad ways, but we're not repeating those prayers anymore. We're still praying for people at war. We're still praying for redemption. So when it comes to this Haggadah, we looked to make a book that would reflect our experience, meaning our collective experience in this era, in this moment, without it being particularly tied to the events in the same way that the tchinot were from the first Aznashir book. And so we have women writing tchinas, which I'm going to share with you, and people writing divrei Torah, words of Torah scholarship. The full text of the Haggadah is there, and artwork, as you'll see as we go through some pages, from women across Israel. Many different styles of art, many different kinds of interpretations. We were not looking to convey a particular message, except for the fact that I've discovered that when everybody kind of puts their voices together, certain messages of their own accord seem to emerge, or themes that we didn't plan on, but they're there. So I would say, well, let me share that again. I'm sorry for the back and forth here, but I want to give you the opportunity to see what I find to be far more glorious in my face. The forward here is written by Rabbanit Malkabina, who is founder of Matan, this Women's Institute of Torah Learning. And you can see as I scroll here the difference of styles of art, and the number of different voices, the manner of different voices of the women who come to contribute. Shira Lincoln Sheps, whom I've mentioned, she wrote the introduction here, and then we have a page of literally how to use the Haggadah. And this is what, as much as this is literally a key to the book, I want to talk about how it impacted me, because we have here the Torah and we have the Tchinot, and then we had certain educational, story, psychological insights with so many different voices coming together on the page. On the one hand, there was something for everybody, and on the other hand, I found, as I say, the repetition of themes to be very powerful. So most importantly, perhaps, we had a lot of discussion and a lot of recognition of where we are at now. This is a photograph from a Jerusalem photographer named Tzipora Lifshitz. It looks better, I guess, in an actual book than on a screen, but I think you can see the power here. She says she's got a series of every year she takes this photo, her kids looking for the chametz, for the leaven before the holiday. And, you can see they turn off all the lights and they've got the candle. And it introduces us into this book in a way of searching and searching together. And we have Pesach preparation. Again, just to give a sampling here, where you don't need of the tchina, this first line, Hashem, God, remind me that dust is not chametz, leaven, and the people I love are not korbanot, sacrifices, meaning let's keep our perspective healthy as we embark on this holiday. So it's very contemporary. It's not about the war. This was obviously put together before Iran, we couldn't have published it that fast, for example. And then we asked questions. Here's an example of a prompt, right? What do you need to be in place to enjoy the Seder? To facilitate discussion, not just reading and personal enrichment, but to bring it to the Seder table. And so one of the things that came out for me repeatedly was this interplay of generations. That on the one hand, we have us in this generation coming to search for the leaven, making sure that we're prepared, making sure that everybody in our family will have a seat at the table. And then I begin, there's not pardon me. And then when we begin the Seder, we start embodying or living up to what the sages put together for us in this book. And so all of these voices, the women who are bringing their prayers and the insightful experience for those who are using this Haggadah at the Seder, what I felt was very powerful was this idea that we are very much at the Seder table. And I think that a lot of people feel, women in particular, I don't want to stereotype, but I think that for generations, a lot of women get to the Seder table and they feel like they're done. Long before you start with Kiddush, with the sacramental wine, they're already just so worn out from all the preparation, from the cooking and the cleaning and the preparing the children or whatever else they might have to do. And I have a friend who makes a point of saying she tries to get a nap on the day before the Seder, like in the afternoon, so that she can come to the Seder table like refreshed and awake and everything, to be a participant. And see, that's happening in this book. That the women who wrote and being at the table into that kind of participation, that we bring our voices, the voices that the sages gave us in the classic text of the Haggadah. And you see, again, on the pages here, here's a title page and the label of Orchatz, for example, but then you also have exactly what you're supposed to do, regular or karpas, with the regular blessing that you would have in any Haggadah. The details are there to bring our actions of the classic text, to mix it together with what we're bringing to the table. Okay. The other thing I discovered is the sages, many attempts, I think, throughout the Haggadah to bring an experience of how do we represent the function to us, how do we do it too? So you have women here talking about exactly how do we do it too? And you see in the art, here's a broken matzah. How is that a matter of freedom? How is that a matter of redemption? And I think that there's a just tremendous scope to raise these questions and to address these questions. Here, I'm sorry, I jumped past what I want to say. After the matzah is broken, then we come to this question: what unspoken wisdom do you have when you have something that is hidden? And what is the thematic messaging that the sages brought to us through the instruction manual, shall we say, that is the Haggadah? It doesn't actually say much about the story in Exodus, right? The actual night of going out. But when we put it all together and we have the story from Exodus, which has freedom throughout, and then the sages experience or attempt to experience this measure of freedom that they bring it to the table, then I think that, again, prompts us to focus on how we're going to live up to the sage's instructions, and also ourselves put that experience of redemption from Egypt on every generation. We're going to experience ourselves as going out, as experiencing that redemption. We have to pay attention to it and bring ourselves to the Seder table, to that experience. We had many, many pieces of artwork representing the dividing of the sea, the splitting of the sea, after redemption. That's after the exodus from Egypt. I want to why it kind of hit me. I'm trying to get to Korech. I will get there. Here's Vihisha Amda, right, which Tamara just spoke about. And again, the as we put it together was a focus on the end, as opposed to a focus on in every generation they're standing against us. Perhaps because of our perspective of the past several years, we in Israel feel that thoroughly. And so when we then come to that line in the Haggadah, "V'hakadosh Baruch Hu matzilenu Adam," and God will save us. Every generation, God saves us, rescues us from the hand of the enemy. It's a statement of faith in the wake of, in the face of, maybe not today. There's been so much loss for so many families in Israel that we regard this question of redemption, I think, maybe in a different way than we would, or than I would have, certainly, um, growing up and living, as I said, in an era without overt anti-Semitism, without October 7th, etc. I'm going to now jump to Korach so that we can move this along. You see, it's very colorful, lots and lots of voices on the page. I think is probably ever best used in preparation and not just at the table. There's too much here, but Korach, come on. All right, I'll come back to maror. By way of example, right? We have people who wrote about maror, a step towards redemption, and we have illustrations that recognize Jewish experience across the world. This is Aliyah from Yemen, is the piece of artwork. We have a piece from Shuli Mishkin, who's a Torah, and she's talking about literally the plants in Israel and how they were chosen to be the example of the bitter herbs, maror. Israel's Wildness. This painting is by Avital Sharansky, the mother of Rachel Sharansky Danziger, who is famed most to free her husband from the Gulag in Soviet prison. And then we come to Korach. And here's my example. We have, of course, a title page. It's one of the 14 steps of the Haggadah, of the Seder night, the hill sandwich. We have the words, the text. And then we have a Dvar Torah from Rabbi Chani Tarragon on the brokenness and a little bit exactly what you were talking about in terms of the charoset. We have a piece I wrote it on the Hillel sandwich, and how we have multiple into maror at the Seder, because we first eat it as maror, and then we have the korech. And I want to share more insight, and I can close. This Trina was written by Juliana Brown. She's actually one of our translators from English to Hebrew and from Hebrew to English. So she writes as follows: a nation living betwixt and between freedom. May the Omnipresent have mercy on us, and sandwiched among the layers in which we live, within them, within the city walls, among the nations, between the seasons, between Shachrit, Mincha, and Mariv, between the holy and the mundane, between husband and wife, between the seventh day and the 6 days of headlines. Between being ready and willing, I am here in bite, which we read, which we live, which has been approved for publication. And like the maror within the sandwich, the soft burning layer. I'm sorry, I'm missing a word because I've got all of your lovely faces there. The soft burning layer, which strikes like a sudden storm. Blessed is the fruit of the land, first like thunder tearing through silence, and a sudden drop of sweetness from within the burning core. As our tears pour slowly down, rinsing the fire in our heart, because it is so bitter with a bite. But God declared light, and there was light. One of the things that I find to be most valuable here in the context of this bit afterwards is this idea that we're on this path to redemption. I know people who are deep believers in a much more messianic approach to redemption than I naturally gravitate to. I find that the path to redemption, I think, might be embodied by the experience of the Seder that has preserved, that the Jews have preserved, and that has preserved the Jews for all of these years, where we put our own imprint on the Seder each year. I think that's what the people who contributed to our Haggadah were trying to do, what we were trying to do in putting it together. And that when we say that we are here in many component parts, so that we, in the many component parts of the Haggadah, we have those tchinos, that reaching out in prayer, that personal, individualized voice with the actions that are, in some measure, in some way, observed across the Jewish world. At the same time, I find it all incredibly powerful to see how that puts us on this same path together, even with this great diversity and disagreement of the Jewish people. And I find that when we say we're here on the path to redemption, that when we bring all of our voices together, it doesn't have to at all be a cacophony, right? It can be harmony. And even through the cacophony, I think the same messaging comes through to bring us forward, even in these times of great, I'm going to say distress, travail. They're not easy. But I think coming together like this makes them easier.
Rabbi, and I can't thank you enough for sharing all of that beauty with us, the text and the graphics, and just the way that you brought all those voices together, as you were saying in the end, like that idea of bringing these voices together in harmony is really, I think, what Rabbi Aliza was referencing in the beginning when she opened with Noseh o b'chavero, that we're trying to all lift each other up and do this together. So thank you so much for that beautiful Haggadah. And we look forward to getting it whenever we're able to get it, whether it's this year or in the future. And it'll add so much to all of our Sederim. So thank you for creating that beauty and for sharing it with all of us. And along this lines of finding ways to lift each other up,
Thank you for giving me.
Sorry. Along the idea, we want to also introduce other ways that we can care for people within our community and also people in the broader community as well. Because on Pesach, or leading up to Pesach, there is a custom or a mitzvah to give ma'ot chitim, to give some type of charity. And it actually is ideal if it can happen such that the money can be given to the people in need on the Shabbat before Pesach, which is actually happening in a few hours. For some of us, in a few hours, some of us a few more hours, but it's coming soon. And so we wanted to share with you some ways and some organizations and some places that you might like to give to if you feel so called. So we're going to put up a graphic and I'll kind of walk through what some of these are. Okay, so I'm going to start in the top left, CST. And CST is actually an organization in London. It's the Community Security Team. And in the wake of the rising anti-Semitism in London, we wanted to share this place with you, this organization with you, as also just let anyone, if anyone's here from London or if you have any connections to the community there, please send everybody there our love and know that we're thinking of them and holding everybody in our hearts. Then the one and the bottom, let's go to the middle, which I'm having a little trouble seeing that one. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, this is an organization in Modi'in. So this is an organization actually where teens in Modi'in are creating packages for people in the north who are in greater danger and might be struggling even more than people in Modi'in are. And so they're making these care packages and toy packages for people who are in shelters in the north. And this is being done by teens who aren't actually in school right now or who are in Zoom school. And it's a really beautiful initiative. Now let's go up to the top right corner. This is the Bridge Pups Rescue. And this is a nonprofit that's focused on helping immigrant pups and also people on the international bridges between Mexico and Texas. And this is another beautiful way that you can give and support people in need. Now let's go down to the right corner on the bottom with Kuma. So Kuma is an organization that supports widows in Israel and helps them with financial support and training so that they can find other ways to support themselves after losing their spouse. And it's also particularly hard for them right now with kids home and not having school. And so there's also emotional support for the kids and psychological support and peer support. And then we'll move to the middle on the bottom row, which is the New Neighbors Partnership. This is an organization that's helping new refugee families connect with their neighbors to acclimate and resettle. And there's donating of hand-me-downs and people to help them settle and feel culturally connected and build connections and relationships. And then I want to close with this flowers that you see on the bottom left. And this one, I don't know if I can say this without crying, but this is an organization or more so like an individual that I'll tell you about. So it's the wife of Ariel Sosnov, Zichrono Livracha, and he was a soldier who recently fell in Lebanon, and he had a religious practice of bringing flowers to his girlfriend every Friday. And he did that so much so that he actually left hundreds of shekels to his younger brother to make sure that even when he was in battle, his girlfriend would get flowers every Friday. And so in his memory, his girlfriend has been setting up pop-up flower shops outside train stations. And every Friday, people can go there and for free, they can make a bouquet and give it to somebody that they love before Shabbat. And so you can go and sponsor flowers for her so that she can do this for other people. And so these are just some of the many, many ways that we can help carry each other through this time and help support our community and one another. And we wanted to actually offer you the opportunity to share any places that you know of that are doing work that you find beautiful and meaningful. And we're going to invite you to put them into the chat. And it doesn't only have to be financial support. If you know of somebody who's doing a beautiful action, like creating something that allows people to feel welcome, that creating packages that help people feel like they're cared for during times of hardship, whatever it is, anything that you feel like is part of that idea of lifting people up and of giving to people, but they can receive something either emotional, financial, or spiritual before Passover. We'd love for you to put it in the chat. And while we're generating these ideas and sharing them with one another, we're going to play the song that Rabbi Tamara mentioned before, V'hi She'amda. And I loved how you were talking about, like, what is this V'hi? Who is this feminine voice? Is this the Shekhinah? And as you were saying that, I was wondering if it's also like the community of women, like is each of the women that are coming together to do this, caring for one another, the he that's helping everyone stand up. So we'll put on the music. Please fill the chat and let's read each other's ideas and be here together.
שעמדה לאבותינו, והיא שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו, שלא אחד בלבד עמד עלינו לכלותנו, עמד עלינו לכלותנו.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for putting the pieces in the chat. Keep going. You don't have to stop just because I'm gonna share something else with you. You can keep adding all of them. It's so nice to see all the different places that people can donate to and that we can help support one another. And also from SVIVAH's end, as we were thinking about how can we feel this way that we're carrying each other into the Seder, we wanted to give you something that you could take to your Seder, and we wanted to allow you to feel like we're in conversation together at the Seder, because as Ariella mentioned, this is the most beautiful way to prepare is to be together and to discuss and to feel what is it that we're feeling in this moment. So we've created a little Seder questions, a Seder companion maybe, and it is just a few different pieces of the Seder that we've looked at that are kind of what I would say like central pieces. And with them, we added some questions that might allow you an opportunity to go into those deeper conversations and to really think about what does it feel like this year, right? Each year we're going through a different experience when we come to the Seder. And this year, as it feels like it's been for a few years now, is a very particular, a very complex, very challenging moment. And we want to allow that to come out through the pieces of the text that are there to carry us from slavery to Egypt. And maybe we'll be experiencing a mixture of them, as Rabbi Tamara mentioned also, as we go through the Seder. So this, you can, Jordan, if you want to just kind of scroll through, perfect. Thank you so much. You can just see there's here these moments. And I encourage you to use this if you'd like as something you can look at before the Seder, if you want to feel like you have some space to prepare. I love that idea of having a nap before the Seder. So you can nap and you can read and you can prepare. And you can also have this during the Seder. And if it's something that you want to discuss with everybody there, that's beautiful. And if you want to discuss with your own self, right, just have an internal dialogue. And you can use it, of course, whether you're at a Seder or whether you're not at a Seder, whatever your Pesach looks like, whatever your Passover experience is like. We hope that this will allow you more opportunities and more pathways where you can connect with the text, where the text can carry you and speak to the moment that you're in, and hopefully bring out whatever it is inside of you that you desire to express, whether that's privately or publicly. So we will share this with you. And we hope that it will enrich your Passover experience. And we would absolutely love to hear your feedback and love to hear how you interacted with it and what it was like for you, so that we can share this together as much as possible, and so that we can create things for you in the future that feel really resonant and really like exactly what you were hoping for. So wishing you all a really beautiful, peaceful Pesach, and I'm gonna pass to Ariella.
I am just blown away and so grateful. How amazing are we? Forget me. Our amazing teachers, Anne, Chani, Tamara, Aliza, Dalia, and Jordan, all of you worked so hard to make Pesach for us. Thank you with such a giant, giant heart. I don't even know, like, thank you. Just thank you. I'm bringing each one of you with me. The chat was beyond, and each of you shared so much. I'm like so thankful. This is like just a wealth of riches. I'm gonna make sure Jordan, I think, already put it in the chat, but we'll put it again, and I'm sure we'll send it to more Pesach resources. Please check them out. We have a whole page that Jordan pulled together with articles and previous gatherings of ours and questions to bring to your Seder table, a music playlist. Thank you, Dalia. And this gorgeous, gorgeous resource that Dalia worked so hard on and put together. You are all incredible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to let our people who are up later than they should be maybe be able to go to sleep, so we can all wish them well with our tefillot for their safety and safekeeping for them, their families, their neighbors, and all of Klal Yisrael. But we want to say thank you, and we love you, and let you go to sleep. I want to just also flag that we have more stuff coming up after Pesach that we are very, very excited about. So please stay tuned. We won't bother you with all of it, but I wanted to just flag the amazing Nama Sadan is offering a beautiful course during the Omer. You can find it on her website, namasadan.com. She's also being so fantastic and crazy and wonderful, Nama, and offering a daily Omer counting for the time period between Pesach and Shavuot, those 7 weeks. So she has a WhatsApp group and an invitation. This was the message that she wanted to share. The Torah teaches that the Omer is also a process to calm down and to come land from the intensity of the Seder, and that is the counting of the Omer. And so she's getting ready to count with us again. It's been an intense year, and the counting, she said, that we will do is following a mystical tradition which was developed by the Jews after their expulsion from Spain in a time when they felt that everything was falling apart. So she invites you to join there, which will be beautiful. And I'm also going to ask you to save the date on your calendar for April 16th, a little bit of a shifting of focus, but we're going to have a program that we're calling The Cost of Silence, Reckoning Around Harm. We know that the news moves faster than any of us can keep up with, but we wanted to make sure to address the stories of gender-based harm that have surfaced of late. I'm not going to mention names because it's not about the harm doers, and we are always about centering the experiences of survivors and the experience of women, especially around harm and secondary trauma. These occurrences hurt us all, survivors, of course, but as women in general, harm chips away at our sense of humanity, and that is not okay. This gathering is going to be important, and we have some very special and spectacular educators who are bravely coming to talk about harm, particularly when the harm doers are Jewish themselves, and how we are supposed to respond as a community. It's going to be in partnership with many other Jewish feminist organizations. So please come, please save the date, and please invite others. This is one way, one very small way that we can do our part to contribute to the healing that we all need around this. Our Facebook group is always around. Share matzo ball recipes, ask advice, share a bit of music or books, as we saw. That was definitely a big, we need a SVIVAH book club ASAP. Our WhatsApp announcements group, just so that we can keep reminding you of upcoming gatherings. We have our participant survey if you happen to have time. I know this is a busy time. If you don't, no worries. Thank you to all of you who so generously donated. We are so, so, so grateful for your kind generosity. Every gift really keeps us going. Thank you. And if you would consider a gift of any size, svivah.org/donate. We will send out all the amazing resources that were shared. I'm going to wish everybody a meaningful, safe, peaceful Pesach. And you will whether you like it or not, you're coming with me to my Seder table. So thank you all for tonight. Thank you for all your beautiful, heartfelt kavanot and intentions and dedications for our learning. And may the merit of our learning bring what we were all praying for tonight. I'll stick around for a little bit because I would love to say hi to anybody who's new here or just people who would like to say hello. But I definitely want to let our amazing teachers get some rest. And thank you so, so much for being here, and a chag sameach to everyone.